So we're standing now on the floodplain of a small burn, which is a tributary of the River Spey. It's quite typical of a lot of burns in that it was quite heavily engineered and modified in the 1960s, we think. So an embankment was built between the field that we're on now and the burn itself, and the burn was straightened, and that was done to help make managing the land and doing the agriculture on it easier for the farmers. We now realise that these straightened, canalised burns are not functioning correctly in the natural sense.
Floodplains have been farmed on for many hundreds of years because they're really fertile, but that only happens when water is allowed to reach the floodplain, and you need water to spill out of the banks of your rivers and burns to settle down and let the nutrients and sediments settle out.
The plan here is to make some holes in the embankment to reconnect the floodplain with the burn itself.
We've got things like scrapes that have been put in, and they'll really benefit breeding waders, but also things like dragonflies and lots of different invertebrates. They also benefit frogs and toads and newts.
The River Spey is obviously an incredible lifeblood of this part of Scotland, and 2 miles of the River Spey run right through the Macallan estate here, and we have an absolute duty to ensure that we look after all of our habitat, of course, in the estate, but also the species that live with here, and the Atlantic salmon in particular is a species that is at a turning point at the moment. Tributaries like the Delliefure Burn, they are important spawning habitat for salmon. If we don't have that, then we don't have the new young salmon coming in.
In the burn itself, we're going to be putting what we call large wood structures, which are basically felled trees with the root plates still on.
That breaks the flow and encourages the water to carve out a new channel. It creates new meanders. So by getting that diversity of habitat, we've got better conditions for salmon to lay their eggs, to live in, but also the invertebrate prey that they feed on, and for species such as freshwater perch and mussel.
It is a natural process. As fisheries managers, we've all been very guilty of taking trees out of rivers, and now the trend is to start putting them all back in, and it works really well. Flooding is a big issue for salmon, these severe events, so we're trying to reduce the flow.
In the event of a flood, having these structures and habitat diversity in the river will prevent the young fish, the fry, from getting washed out.
Flooding is becoming much more of an issue with the effects of climate change, and where you have a burn that's not allowed to flood onto its floodplain, you're losing that opportunity to store water higher up in the catchment in places like this.
If we have enough of these projects around the National Park, we should see a real impact on flooding downstream in our towns and villages.
It is a job that we all have to do together. It's not going to be done by one organisation, it's not going to be done by one group.
Although just as the works are being done, the site looks a bit rough and ready, and we're seeing lots of bare earth here. Once we start seeing the plants and invertebrates come in, we'll see a whole cascade of birds and mammals using this area and the new habitats that have been created.